Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that the information in this presentation is not to be or construed as investment advice. The information presented are subject to change without notice, and while we have made every reasonable effort to ensure that the content is reliable and accurate, we have not independently verified the content and are not responsible for errors therein. Please consult a professional advisor before putting a loonie in any of these financial markets. Hi everyone, my name is Richard Diaz and welcome back to the IceCap Canadian Market Wrap. In last week's episode, we touched on the collapse in consumer confidence and how that might affect domestic demand, consumption, and inflation. In this week's episode, we're going to discuss a similar collapse in small business sentiment, what it does and doesn't mean for the Canadian economy, and how the focus on the trade war has masked some of the underlying issues that will likely remain should Canada and the US eventually reach some sort of resolution. First, the headline figure, and there's no sugarcoating it. Small businesses are freaked out. The chart before you is the Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses Business Barometer, and is based on forward expectations of performance. The longer-term 12-month indicator registered its most severe fall since its inception. This is not good. But some of you might be asking, what is the CFIB and why do we care? Well, the CFIB is a nonprofit organization that represents the interests of small and medium-sized businesses, SMEs, in Canada, much like the National Federation of Independent Businesses in the US or the Federation of Small Businesses in the UK. It is an organization that conducts surveys and publishes reports on business trends, challenges, and economic conditions. They also lobby on behalf of their members. Analysts like me rely on these organizations because they provide timely and reliable data which can be used to draw conclusions on what's going on in any given economy. And although this week's headline is hard to ignore, there are other questions in the CFIB's monthly survey and publications that are worth noting, such as the ongoing labor shortage and the availability of working capital. One of my favorites is the small business expectations of average prices going forward. It is the same logic as producer input prices used in the IceCap inflation model. Small businesses see price changes before consumers do, and so it's no surprise this CFIB index does a decent job leading the official figures and confirms what we talked about last week, that we continue to worry Canada will face a jump in headline inflation over the summer. Shifting gears back to tariffs, it's important to note that not all sectors feel the same way about the trade war or will be impacted in the same way. Some sectors said there will only be slight negative impact, while others are extremely fearful. The conclusion I take away from the survey is it's the uncertainty rather than the tariffs themselves causing the collapse in sentiment. According to the CFIB, 1/3 of business owners have already shifted to suppliers or markets within Canada. Another wrinkle is that most U.S. exporters have the CUSMA, or the new NAFTA, compliant goods. Businesses need more certainty. It's as simple as that. Once the rules become clear, they become easier to navigate. Now, I'm not saying that reciprocal tariffs or the U.S. tariffs won't cause pain, but no one knows where the U.S.-Canada trade war is heading in the long term. For some businesses, making drastic changes is just simply not feasible, but others are already taking action to offset current impacts. Another important point when considering the small business survey is the sample bias. As much as I like the CFIB data, the sample is highly skewed towards retailers, and the province of Ontario is overrepresented. So if there's so much uncertainty about the tariffs and the business sentiment index itself, why do we care? Well, small businesses make up a large portion of the economy. Their confidence levels reflect economic trends such as growth, recession risks, or inflation pressures. Business sentiment is often a leading indicator of economic performance, and that's what we see in this chart. Weak small business sentiment is correlated with negative GDP growth or a recession, but of course it's not perfect, and this analysis is far too simplistic. One simple reason is because just how volatile the survey is, and again, it's about expectations. A good example is COVID, where the index snapped right back into positive territory, whereas GDP growth remained negative for a long time. This is not to say that we should ignore the collapse in business sentiment, just that it's only part of the puzzle. Even before the trade war, Canada's real GDP per capita had been falling for nearly 2 years. Retail sales had been flat for the same amount of time. Consumption was also weak, and there had been declining non-residential capex or investment. Industrial production, the blue line in the chart, has also been flat for nearly 3 years. Thus, blaming any potential recession solely on the tariff war is a mistake, although of course it's not going to help. All right, that's a wrap for this week's episode. Thank you very much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and follow for more. And as always, we manage money for families all across the world and Canada, so feel free to get in touch.